I'm thinking of buying a new couch.
Why? Why shackle your future to your furniture? You might need a change of pace and skip town, like a bird in the wind. Or Felipe could move and spur of the moment.
Who's Felipe?
Read the tea leaves, sister.
Or you could discover your inner you with a place of your very own.
I am my own person.
Feather, furniture that changes with you.
This is an upgrade.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Adam Hargis, the Associate Publisher of T Magazine. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm delighted to welcome you to this evening's TimesTalks design event, the first ever produced in conjunction with T Magazine. T's new summer travel issue published today nationally, and if you'd like to grab a copy on your way out, they'll be by the door. We're pleased to present tonight's conversation in collaboration with NYC by Design, the city's annual celebration of all things design, which attracts hundreds of thousands of designers and attendees each year in May. I'd also like to give special thanks to our sponsor, Feather. Feather has graciously provided all of the furnishings that you see on the stage tonight, and all of their offerings are available to view on livefeather.com. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the founder and CEO of Feather, Jay Reno.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jay Reno. I'm the founder of Feather. We're a furniture subscription service that offers a flexible and sustainable alternative to ownership. I created Feather in 2017 after experiencing the all too familiar pains of moving in New York City. I've lived here for 8 years, and during each of my 6 moves, I was faced with the dilemma of what to do with my furniture. Roommates changed, spaces and layouts changed, and styles changed in each of these chapters. So each of the 6 apartments called for different furniture. I found myself having to decide between buying fast furniture or cheap furniture that I could use just once and toss out later, or spending a lot of money on the type of high quality furniture that I really wanted. It's a problem that nearly everybody in cities can relate to. The reality is that most young people have lives that are constantly changing. So traditional ownership of big items like furniture just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The average American is moving 12 times on average before buying a home. They're essentially buying forever furniture when they're not yet in their forever homes. They're also discarding furniture at record rates, putting it on the street and hoping that somebody else picks it up. But the reality is, we all know what will typically happen with that furniture. It'll end up in landfills. With Feather, you can have beautiful furniture, high quality furniture, with the option to change it when your life changes. You pay monthly for a membership, and you get access to services that make it easy to move, to change your life, and to not hurt the planet or your wallet in the process. Our mission is to transform the relationship people have with material goods to create a healthier and happier planet. And we've built a circular model that empowers millions of people to embrace their changing lives. We hope you'll join us in taking action to keep furniture in homes and out of landfills. So thank you to the New York Times for allowing us to sponsor this event tonight. And if you want to talk with us after the event, the Feather team is here and we'll chat with you in the lobby. So enjoy the talk. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Jay. Now we're on to the main event, a discussion of both design and modern creativity with Studio 54 co-creator and internationally renowned entrepreneur Ian Schrager, in conversation with award-winning designers behind Roman & Williams, Robin Standefer and Stephen Alesch. Moderating tonight's talk is my dear friend and the design and interiors director of T Magazine, Tom Delavan. So please join me in welcoming all of them, Tom Delavan, Ian Schrager, Robin Standefer, and Stephen Alesch.
Hi. I'm going to start off really easy to ease our way into this and talk a little bit about your past successes.
Do we have to?
Yeah, make it easy. Steve Jobs famously said that people don't know what they want until you show it to them. And I think a lot of your guys' success is attributable to the fact that you had the foresight to give people something that they wanted before they knew they wanted it. So starting with Ian, tell us a little bit about what is it that you gave people, what was it that people wanted that you kind of gave them with Studio 54 and then later on with the boutique hotel idea? What was the context of that?
Well, we were always just trying to express ourselves, what we personally liked. You know, we didn't have any data. We didn't have any focus groups. We didn't have any research. All we did was what we personally liked. And we wanted to do something that manifested our popular culture. You know, we didn't really want to embrace all the rules that were been handed down without questioning each rule and deciding which ones we would follow and which ones we wouldn't. You know, the thing is, if you do something that people haven't seen before, it hits them in a special way. They get a visceral reaction to it. Something they haven't seen before. It's startling. It creates a wonderment, and that's where the great success comes. And that's where the fun for me is.
Yeah.
And so it's always been like that. I never just wanted to do something, but in a different color. It didn't interest me when we got started, and it still doesn't interest me.
Tell us a little bit about the boutique hotel idea. I mean, it's hard for us to imagine now that that was a thing that didn't exist when you first opened Morgan's and the Royalton. What was the idea behind that? What were you thinking?
You know, first of all, I didn't realize how important an idea it was.
Right.
Excuse me. Not because there are thousands and thousands of versions of what Steve and I created, and not because all the big companies are embracing it as well, and the public benefits from that because there's better design and the experiences are better. But I think that idea permeates everything. It permeates our offices. A guy from WeWork, Adam Newman, has told me that he was inspired by the public spaces in our hotels when he did WeWork. It now impacts residential living. I think being in the hotel business is not merely about selling rooms. That's one aspect of it. But hospitality and the desire for unique experiences and elevated experiences permeates everything, every market, every product. And so that's what I think that boutique idea did. It was done quite innocently, and you know, like we didn't have a map. You know, we were just trying to do a hotel that you know, we wanted to stay in, not the kind of hotel that my parents stayed in. Not because I rejected that, but because I wanted something, you know, that I liked. I didn't want to have an indestructible bedspread, and I didn't want to have, you know, and various things like that. And we broke every rule in the book. I mean, we were the first ones to have white sheets because they showed stains and they weren't so efficient. Loose pillows, unpatterned carpets, painted walls, incandescent lights, glass shower doors, loose furniture off the room, furniture lowered so that all the horizontal surfaces are on, you know, one plane, and it feels calmer.
Yeah.
So, I hope I'm not talking too much.
Oh no, I'm going to give them a chance. Don't worry.
I'm here too as an audience.
And that was Morgan's. And that was, you know, a very small hotel, no lobby to speak of, and rooms. Very small rooms, low ceilings, 35 square foot bathrooms. We had showers there because we couldn't even fit a tub in the room. It was a rooming house. And then we went and did the Royalton which was a few blocks away, and we tried to juxtapose the Royalton against Morgan's. If Morgan's was an introverted, understated hotel, Royalton was an extrovert. It was a scene. It was a beehive of activity. The best restaurant, the best bar was right downstairs in the lobby. So you made a choice, not because of design, but because of personality. If you wanted the understated, quiet hotel getaway, you went to Morgan's. If you wanted to be part of a scene, never have to leave the hotel, go right downstairs, you went to the Royalton. And those two hotels were the prototypes for every lifestyle and boutique hotel that's out there now.
Yeah. And the choice of Philippe Starck, how did you get to that? I mean, it was pretty radical choice at the time.
You know, Steve Jobs said, you really can't connect the dots until later on when you look back. You know, we had worked with Andre Putman, who was a consummate stylist, great taste, worked for a lot of fashion people in Europe, but she was a great stylist. So, when we did the next hotel, we thought we wanted to work with an original furniture designer rather than a stylist. So it's there's a continuum, you know, of evolving and keep upping it. I remember when we did the lobby with Philippe in the Royalton, with Stephen and Robin ultimately did that hotel as well and made a real contribution. You know, I was afraid it was all open. There was no front desk. You know, like I remember Philippe saying to me, "Well, I gave you the car. You got to learn how to drive it." You know, Philippe is a kindred spirit. He's still out there today, still working, still creating, because he loves it, I suppose. His work has been as good for the last 40 years. People were skeptical about his work. They didn't realize how brilliant he was. He's a real iconoclast of Philippe, and I'm incredibly happy for his and youth success. And he, like me, is happier now than we've ever been. So
that's a good story.
Yeah.
Let me talk to you guys for a little bit. Can we switch to the next slide? I think you guys are really pioneers in an aesthetic which is really kind of taken over in the last decade. And what do you think you gave to people that they were looking for when you started doing work like this? What was it that they were looking for that you gave them?
I think sort of a sense of getting closer to. This is a residence, right?
Yeah, this is.
On the screen, it's our house actually.
It's our house.
But you know, we really. I mean, I think to hear Ian talk about emotion, for us being emotionally connected to a space, and thinking how you create a public space, a hotel space that's got a lot of emotion and a lot of texture and is sort of collected. I mean, we had this kind of obsession with these old world houses, and we were thinking, how can you do that for a new generation? How can we make a kind of a more emotional, collected, visceral space?
Yeah, how do you bring that into the public realm?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, these are private spaces. Our home was private, right? And we were hired to design things, but we did have this desire to bring our private worlds into the public realm. And I think it took a couple of clients to kind of wrap their head around that.
Right.
Alex Calderwood being the one really who said, "You guys, you're home. That's the key. This is like, let's bring this to the ACE." The ACE was really the breakthrough project for us that really opened us up, had us not playing sort of the design wars, which we were kind of engaged in at that time, and just let us be personal.
Yeah.
I think also at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a general move towards a minimalism. And I felt like you guys kind of broke that trend to show something that was more personal and had more warmth to it. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for sure. And you have it's a real challenge, right? Because you want to create something that's that emotional and kind of visceral and tactile, but it's a public space, right? So they're not your objects.
Right.
So you're faced with a real challenge there of how you create that voltage. So you then have to, as Ian said, you have to create this personality, almost this narrative for the space. Not a false narrative, but one that's about whether it's an introvert, an extrovert, or a place that you want to hide. I mean, so we started to feel, actually we started to work in a lot of buildings that were historic buildings. And we had kind of an interest in historical architecture, but how you kind of invade that with a combination of objects from a lot of different time periods. And that was something that we were doing in residences, and starting to do that in hotels, I think, had a pretty big impact on people. Because I think they said, wow, I can connect with these objects like I'm really in a home, and I can sort of really be myself in that world. And that was meaningful.
Think of the timing too. It was 2002, 2004 when we really became organized and started taking on projects and things. And things were getting really beige. I mean, it was restaurants,
that's what I was
hotels. It was like beige city. There was a club across the street from our house.
Called Beige.
4th Street, called Beige. Yeah, everything's actually beige on beige. And we had grown up in the 80s and 90s and watched this whole cycle. And I'll never forget our first trip to the Delano when we were relatively young, and we're like, when we first discovered Starck ourselves, right? Paramount Hotel or
I think it was we were first together. I think it was like our first weekend.
We loved the mischief
and
the playfulness and the sexiness. But that did run its course and started to become just really neutralized, I think, by 2000. And then we had this strong desire, like I said, to bring this kind of historical, personal view into it. It kind of needed that.
But the historical isn't necessarily literal, right?
No, I mean, when we say historical, it's just about not feeling like every object and everything had to have a contemporary reference.
Right.
And I think when you see, the best spaces, I mean, you see that you're just open and you're a sponge for references, and you then know how to manage them, and you know how to manage that kind of eclectic kind of connection of all these different things, and you create a recipe. And we always had that. I guess, look, you have to, we're more about, I think, an ethos than a style, but you do have to put your stake in the ground. I mean, you never call us minimalists, right? I mean, we're just not. But we're interested in being good editors, but interested in making sure there's a sense of kind of past and future in the work we do. Because you have to start to say, there's still the word modernism is for a period of time now that's going to soon be 100 years old.
Right.
So you have to start to define what that means and what that means in the kind of public realm.
I know that you've hired them to work on some of your new hotels. Tell me a little bit about why you chose them.
They're outsiders, like the way I'm an outsider. They're looking to violate the status quo. They don't have a look. When you put disparate things together, unlikely combinations of things together, people haven't seen anything like that before, and that's what gives it a strength. You get that strength with the diversity of people, and you get that strength with the diversity of design elements. They originally worked in the movies, so they didn't have a look. They came and they did whatever they had to do to satisfy the requirements of their job. And they have the same approach with spaces. All of their things are different. They're bright and they're creative. I find them very nice to work with.
But there must be some tension sometimes. Sometimes don't you have to rein them in, or what? Tell me how that works. Actually explain a little bit how you work together. What's your role versus their role?
Well,
it's a little. Sometimes it fits in with film. Yeah, like a directorial.
We haven't had any. We're just
really.
Truly. Look, and we could sit here and tell stories of tension, but we haven't had any because we absolutely have a mutual respect for the process, for trying to find something that's unique but familiar, right?
Yes.
And that, the combination of that, a place you want to be, a place you love to be, but also something that surprises you. And if you're in a room with someone, I mean, I consider Ian just a legend. And when we started, like we came from the movie business. We had no hotels. I have to be honest, I studied art history, didn't really know what design was. Like even now, design is, to me, secondary to experience. It's a tool to create something that is unbelievably memorable. And I think that's what Ian did. I mean, I will date myself saying that I was at Studio 54, and those moments are like, they're legendary in your imagination. And if you can sort of be profound in someone's imagination, that's what a great hotel experience is, right? I think.
Yeah. Let's move fast forward a little bit. I want to show a clip. There was a quote that I thought was interesting. Anna Wintour says of you, Ian, that Ian is natural at tapping into whatever is going on in culture. And then can we show the clip?
We're only getting started.
So this is what you see when you go to the website for the public. So it's not your usual, pictures of a lobby or pictures of a room. Tell me what was the idea of doing something like this punchy video instead of more of a...
We wanted to capture the energy that in the hotel. We wanted the viewer to feel that. We wanted somebody to feel as if they were looking through a keyhole and were seeing everything that was kind of going on. So we're not selling anything specific. We're trying to show them, evoke a response that this energy that you feel, not that you think, that you feel is at this hotel. And that's the way we always try and do it.
Yeah, so that...
Yeah. No, I was just going to say this opening and the one in Times Square, where both you could really see your directorial side, where there's just so much going on for these openings. They're huge, right? There's such showmanship.
Mike, one question that I have though is, these are pictures of the room. One is
It's not beige.
They're not beige?
Well, I see a fur. You got a fur.
My question is, that video is very exciting, but I wonder if now in hospitality, is design as important as it used to be? Or is it more important to get this sort of, this energetic feeling, we have celebrities, we have Kardashians, we have, where's design in all this?
Design in a public space is like special effects in a movie. If the movie isn't good, the special effects won't save it. If the movie is good, the special effects will make it better and more enjoyable. That's why I cringe when people say my hotels are about design, because they're not about design. Those are special effects. It's about massing the details and the program and putting it all together and having 1 + 1 make 3. That's when an alchemy happens. There's no rule book. It either happens or it doesn't happen. So, to me, I especially now, because the usual corporate suspects have determined that design is good business. So now everybody is doing it, and I think there's a little bit of an overload. And so I think now, toning it down, simplifying it, being confident about it, it looks so simple. But as you know, it's harder to do something simple than to do something complicated. So that's where we have to respond, because it's like,
Yeah, no, it's so true. I think, and that's where I think we've come together in a sense, because Robin and I had this period, this decade of really 2004 to 2014, where we really just poured it on, right? We just unloaded on the world with a lot of our projects and layering an avalanche of emotion. And as we ran our course that way, we had our own instincts of lightening up and getting over certain things and just growing up and wanting to refine things in our own projects like the Guild and the Merceria projects, that we have a lighter touch. And I think they just align with yours too, where design sometimes too much, it's fun for a while, but then it becomes fatiguing. And you want to, I don't know, synchronize it with service and calmness and intelligence.
But it is,
Take the foot off the gas a little bit.
that's so much about what our kind of evolution has been. And the thing, though, that I think we're all saying, though, is it is a powerful partnership between designer, food, creator, and when you get to work with someone who wants a hotel to run, right, or a restaurant, or whatever, right, concept store, but to fully be activated in all its parts, right, like for it to have voltage, you really have a potential to make something super powerful, because none of us can do it alone. We're all better together, and it has to be the right group. I mean, talk about the Royalton, we were really proud to make and work on that interior, but at that moment, there was not an operator who was really present. And so it stayed very sort of stagnant, a little benign, and it was sad. Like when we don't have something that someone takes from us and then really runs and really brings it to life with smells and all the senses, you don't really have anything. Like design's only as good as that.
Yeah, you left. Where'd you go?
I want to say that, there's a difference between the real thing and not the real thing. Not everybody notices the difference, but the people that matter to me do. There's a difference between Royal Crown Cola and Coca-Cola. There's a difference between, the Seagram's building that Mies van der Rohe did and the Ando building on Kenmore Street, masterpieces, and all the banal versions all around town. There's a difference when Philippe Starck does something with irony, and you see all these one-line joke copies. It's terrible. And so I think when you have the light touch and you have the talent, like they do, you can kind of pull it off. And it's a kind of alchemy. It's a magical thing.
I mean, I guess one of the things I'm wondering is, in this alchemy, it seems like design has gotten a little quieter, right? I think you've also said some version of that. Is that a reflection of people's tastes or your own creative impulses? Or do you think that's where design is at in a more general sense?
Well, that's what I like.
Yeah.
The simpler the better. Leonardo da Vinci said, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. That is my anthem. That's my mantra. And it's hard to do simple. It's hard to keep stripping away and stripping away and stripping away till you get something that feels good. Sometimes people come in and they don't know what took so long.
Yeah, just a bed.
Yeah, I know, right?
But I think, especially now, when things are so complex and so fast-moving and so intense, that it's good to go into a public space that elevates your spirits. Like when you go into a nightclub, there's an electricity in the air. You don't know why, you don't know what, but you feel it. And when you go into the room, hotel room, there's a peacefulness. There's a kind of feeling of sanctuary. You feel calm. That's the goal. It's not picking the right color.
Right.
Or the right fabric.
No, it's true.
Creating a mosaic that accomplishes that. And I
think that simplicity is beyond style, meaning I really believe right now we could identify 4 different places, do you know what I mean, from something in Tokyo that has certain more articulation to less, that gets to the heart of that idea, something that's evocative. And I think that's what's happening in the world, is that we're so globally connected, it's just not, that response is not about one style, because you just get tired of it, And so it's more of, it's like a way of thinking. It's a way of, what is serenity, right? What's the emotion you want to provoke? And you can do it with different tools.
Right, I do see what you're saying. But we all want serenity, but the person who's watching that video seems like they were maybe wanting something different. And I wonder if the design is less part of that equation than it once was.
I don't think it's less part of an equation. Everything is part of it. The matches, the pencil, the paper,
I agree.
The uniforms. Everything is part of it. It all comes together and creates something. Design is very important, but it's not the do-all to end-all. It's part of, like with a movie. I've never done a movie, but the script, the director, the actors, the actresses.
What is also there's a range. I think there is a general movement sometimes for things, these big waves, from more complex to simpler. Sometimes I think they're 100-year waves even.
Yeah.
There's shorter waves, 10-year waves. I mean, I know personally myself, I still have a huge appetite for detail and being barraged, and I have to be controlled kind of like an animal sometimes to not just want to add more. I just want details and ribbing and beveling and more materials. But I'm a tool, and I'm used by the people I work with to stay in control, right, to help put these projects together, but then also sometimes just hit it very hard with, like, say, a club or a bar or penthouse room where you just crank it to 11, and those spaces are still a requirement of all of our projects. There's these very punctuated, powerful, condensed, strong spaces.
Something like the Boom Boom Room has a lot of detail.
Right. I live
but
for
it's
those.
sort of serene in a way because we kept the palette very focused, but it's highly articulate. But I also think, though, when you talk, Tom, and I think about the other video, and some of these rooms are in those same hotels, public and private is really relevant. Right?
Yep.
I mean, I don't find a hotel room, a place I really want to party, but sometimes the public space can have more density, a higher temperature, if you will.
The lighting,
Where the room can sometimes be a place for, just a quieter experience. So that's a choice, right? You look at the Cost Hotel, the rooms are super intense, right? They're not serene. So that's a decision, like a decision by the director. I mean, we worked in film, and Ian talking about that. It's not unlike working with a director to work with Ian. That's what it is. It's like you have to have the vision of the whole, because if you don't, it feels like sort of anonymous design. And we all know those places, and they're not, you don't remember them.
But that room on their left, my left, I think they're right.
Yeah.
That room is the brother. The lobby is the sister. They got the same DNA.
Right.
The
The sister's a little more outgoing.
There's adventure.
Yeah, she's,
There's innovative.
her skirt's shorter,
Innovation. It just needs to be done. You can have a very demonstrative innovator, and you can have a very quiet innovator. So, I mean, they go together. You can't have a room that has nothing to do. And in that room, there is a Baroque
There's a mirror,
No,
right?
it's-
It's
Yeah, I
in the
like
sorry,
that
they
mirror.
cropped it
So
It
out.
always gets
Sorry.
cropped out because I think
know, I
people,
like it.
And I saw it the other day. It's off to the
Herzog.
right.
To the right of that TV is a Baroque mirror.
But Herzog was
Yeah,
so
they probably didn't like it.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think they liked it.
he didn't want it, but I don't have
We knew, Stephen and I said that this
intellectual
morning.
predicate
We knew it.
for design. I just have what I like, so, you put a Baroque in that simple room, it's very hard to categorize, very hard to put it in a box. And when you can't do either of those two things, that's when you have a shot at being, very compelling.
I mean, I agree. I think a lot of what's happening in design now is interesting combinations of historical periods. And I think it's a lot what you guys do, and it's a lot what we do in T. We have a story coming up in the next issue, or in the next design issue, which is a collector who collects Italian radical design and mixes it with 17th century furniture. And it's amazing. It's a really exciting, visually exciting, and really interesting. But one of the questions I have is, how do we move things forward if we're just kind of doing a mashup of historical styles? Like, how do we push things forward?
Well, it's like combining historical styles with futuristic.
Yes.
And never before seen things. It's putting it all together, that bouillabaisse.
Yeah.
That,
Yes.
I
It
think
is, so,
always.
it is so good together. I mean, it's just the truth. It's a one step backwards, two steps forward. I mean, this combination of the two is, I don't know, it's just so, I don't know, I find it just so invigorating and interesting.
too.
And,
Absolutely.
even in the deep future, things get
Because that's
stranger
about
and more
tradition. You're
austere.
squeezing that lemon. You don't want to forget the past, but then you're creating something totally new in it. I mean, we're thinking about that all the time. Like, okay, we're creating a new piece of furniture and a new light in this historic room, and then that tension is so human. And there's something, I think, really powerful about that. I believe that is our future. And it's not, because we spent a big part of the 20th century for so many reasons, political and otherwise, ignoring the past. And embracing the past, but now being sort of really confident about putting your mark into that so that you make that, you create that alchemy. I mean, I feel strongly that that's going to be a thread that is consistent and evolving for a long time.
And do you think the same in residential as well, just as relevant?
I do. I mean, we're doing a lot now.
This combination, that's really kind of the core of it, is being this combination of historical styles.
Well, I have to tell you, the residential clients we have now, and some of them are very contemporary in thinking, they come to us and they're like, could I buy that Dutch 18th century cabinet? And I'm like, you can. And you can
And
put
it's
it
really
in this,
cheap relative to everything else in your
you
apartment.
could put it in this super austere room, and you can combine that. And it's now like there's a bravery of that melange that I think, and you could see people invigorated by the dialogue.
I mean, look, the truth is, Europeans have been doing that forever, right?
Yeah, it's exactly.
European designer or European, I don't know, people with a beautiful home. They've been mixing modern and traditional forever. It's just totally natural. But Americans, for some reason, have always had these two camps, one or the other, right? You get this really heavy-handed house that's just built like antique furniture. It's just overwhelmingly claustrophobic. And then you get this really austere condo that's just super hyper clean. Looks like a dentist's office. And you go to Europe and you go to someone's home and you just see things mixed in this beautiful, poetic way. I mean, all over my whole life traveling to Europe, I've always seen it in restaurants and homes. I don't know what the issue is, and I'd like to think that it's a little bit the maturing of a country. In America, as we grow older, we grow up, we start to learn to get over it.
100%.
And modernists learn to not accuse people of being overly nostalgic, and the traditionalists aren't so irritated by modernists, and they work together.
Because you're following intuition there, as opposed to this subscribed idea about what we're doing. And I do think it's such a good comment, Stephen, about being a young country, because we were in India and in some spaces like this, and it's so natural for them. I mean, we're talking like ancient pieces, modern pieces, and there was somebody, a feat amazing guy, who said to us, well, we're an old country, and it's just about this confidence and calm to just reuse and invent, right? And that's innovation.
What do you think, what's exciting you personally in your own life, design-wise? What's new to you?
A project of our own, or
No,
the world
projects,
of
but I
design?
meant more just what are you into now? Like I know you guys have an amazing garden. Is gardening what turns you on now, design-wise, or?
Gardening always turns us on.
We do. We work very hard, and my whole life it's about drawings and spaces and construction. So sometimes on a weekend, and I do have my weekends now. I don't work on the weekends like I did for 30 years. It's just outside. I just don't look at a drawing. I don't pick up a pencil. I don't like being near construction because that is, we run 10 construction jobs at a time, right? It's just overwhelming sometimes, but that's our week-long job. But now the weekends are just in the dirt. It's just gardening, trees, plants. So we are just obsessed. For the last 10 years, really, has been a huge interest in our planting and gardening.
Yeah, absolutely. And then micro, because we're designing a lot of things, right? Objects and furniture, but a lot of it comes from that natural world that we like dig around in on the weekends. Yeah, I mean, just because those, also you learn a lot. I think you actually have to get to a certain place in your life to focus yourself on the micro, to be able to look at something small and really understand what a sort of meticulous focus is on what you want to make. And then I find that creates a passion for expanding to a bigger project. That's a very powerful part of, I think, our work right now.
Anything exciting for you these days in design? Anything in particular?
Everything. I'm lucky. I love what I do. I do it out of love. And the prospect of blowing people away, pulling rabbits out of a hat, doing something unexpected is a thrill for me. I think you can always astonish people by trying new things, by taking a risk, by taking a shot. This is a very capital-intensive industry.
Yeah.
It doesn't encourage new ideas. And so when you do it, it usually winds up with a great response.
Is it harder to take a risk now that you're doing, you're working with Marriott, doing a number of these hotels? Is it harder when you're working with a corporate partner that has to be scalable and global? Is it harder to take those risks?
Working with Marriott, I'm partners with them now 12 years. And it was a little bit of a learning curve. They do everything by consensus.
Yeah.
I do nothing by consensus.
Makes
Opposite, yeah.
You're the consensus.
And, but when I think about working with the people at Marriott, they're a public company. They can't afford to make mistakes. They're responsible for public shareholders, and they're absolutely, honest and transparent people. Refreshing compared to the real estate robber barons
Really?
I work with in New York.
I just have to say, the project we're doing together is not being watered down by 15 people in meetings. They really acquiesce to
They trust you.
Yes,
and
they do.
trust him. And we work on other projects where we do, Robin and I, we're good fighters. We have to convince these giant teams of people who really just try to simplify, but that doesn't happen on this project. And I think it's because of the role you play in that middle zone. It's a little, because this is like a director, and a lot of projects that are just, say, a group of developers and a designer, there's no person in between these sides. And even though you think that they'd really be really good friends, developer who hires a designer, there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of sort of battling of trying to fight for design, and while these other the developers are trying to simplify it and reduce the costs.
Right.
And you don't have a director or someone who's just like the aficionado who's just saying, stop and controlling it.
Reducing the cost is a good thing, but not reducing the integrity of the design.
Yeah, hidden costs, hide the savings.
Let's just say, if you love what you're doing enough, you find ways to save money with, ingenuity and not simply just cutting. But you have to have a collective that wants to do that wants to go on the ride, because that's not easy and it's not fast.
And I consider it a personal reflection on me. I've been at this a while now, and people expect a certain thing, a certain level of excellence, I hope. And if it's not there, I take it very personally. And so I will fight to the death for, but within reason.
Yeah.
Not very much reason, though.
That business.
I'd love an example. Like, give me an example of something you have to fight
We all have this
for.
in common.
We're working on a project in Iceland, and we're working on a project in Tampa. In Tampa, we had discussions about various things, and we would talk it out. We never did have any tension. I want the same thing they want.
Yeah, we
Right.
do. We do.
Right.
If I commented on something and they thought something was very important, I would listen to them. And if I said to them, I thought this was very important for the way the thing works, they would listen to me. In Iceland, we were working with someone, and he tried to influence, and I would just hang him over the head.
So you stuck up for them.
It's not for them, it's for the project.
Yeah.
Exactly.
for.
We're all
Nothing
looking for
else
the same
matters but
thing.
the product. Nothing else matters but the product. Nothing. Respectfully, they came to us, they came to them for a reason. It's our instinct. And if it's money, that's a different story.
Right.
But if it's
Yeah, if
not
it's
money,
over
Yeah,
budget
it's a
or
different
something. But if
story.
it fits within the budget, I mean, there still is, sometimes these projects, sometimes it's because of fear. A developer just is a little bit nervous because maybe their taste level is a little conservative. And,
Sure.
and
you
that's
think
where
that they
the
know how
tension
to,
comes in.
yeah.
Right.
If you get a great design team and they were working with someone that doesn't really know and isn't really confident, that's where tension comes
Yeah,
in.
for sure.
Exactly. And because also a lot of people think, okay, I'm going to come to Roman and Williams or even come to Ian, but then they don't really want to listen.
Right.
They're a little too fearful, right? And we've all heard this story. But if they're too fearful, then I always say, well, why are you here? Because you have to take that leap of faith. That's why we're here. I mean, it's like not trusting a doctor, right? You're getting up like in the middle of the
Yeah.
operation.
Nobody
You're
just
like,
let you do
no,
your
not
job.
there.
Yeah.
Lay down.
I want to open it up to questions. One last question from
I have
me,
a
and then we'll
question
open
or
it up
two.
to the
I
crowd.
wanna go to that.
Tom, I mean, we're all kind of further along in our career, more established. How do you stay relevant when
Good question.
things are moving very quickly? Things have changed so much in the last 20 years in terms of how people share images, how they share design ideas. How do you stay on top of things? How do you keep your finger on the pulse?
I do it instinctively. I can feel it. I can feel where we're going. I can feel the collective unconsciousness. I can just feel it. And it manifests itself in the projects. Gestures, subtleties, but gestures. Staying relevant, if it weren't relevant, I'd have to stop.
Right.
If it wasn't continuing to evolve, I'd stop. It's like a ball player when
Yep.
time for them to get out. So
It's funny. Yeah, I think I'm intuitive too. I don't think things change that fast. People always say that things change so fast, but it's slow to me. It feels like things change very slow. There's still tons and tons of areas that are half-baked, whether it's schools or airports or hospitals. You just see these drywall boxes with fluorescent lights and just ugly spaces that corporate owners that are completely missing the point about design and that improving the world around them, that I just am like, life's too short. There's just so much work to do
Yeah,
as
so
far as
true.
trying to improve the human environment. There's so much junk that still needs to be fixed.
Yeah, that's the goal, staying true to yourself. I think if you are, then that's the answer.
Great. Nice answer. Let's open it up to questions. Sir. Oh, hold on. Someone will bring you a mic. Or do you need a mic? He's down here.
I can talk for you.
Okay. Oh, great.
Rooms got great acoustics, I think. Yeah. Thank you.
Now with this evolution with you working with Marriott, these are systematic franchises that are used to having cycles. 5 years, they do a property improvement plan, 7 years. So there's got to be a point where they're starting to make you click or think towards what do you do next with the addition? What do you do next with public? What are you going to evolve these things to so that the existing owners who are working along with these projects are going to have to plan to that next level? So are you planning and thinking today what that's going to look like next as you're even making these design changes and ideas and concepts? How is that playing into the planning?
When I did the deal with Marriott, everyone was skeptical. They were thinking I was selling out. I couldn't sell out. I'd like to do 1,000 of them. We're working on 40, and so I said to everyone's going to be different. Different physical spaces, different designers, the different cities. They'll be different by definition. Mm-hmm. So like you see here, we did an addition in the clock tower by Madison Square Park, and when we did the Times Square edition, it was black and white. We're only getting started. We'll continually change. We might stay with the black and white a little bit more, but we'll continue to evolve because I love it. The guys at Marriott, they enjoy it too. They enjoy being involved, with something. The Times Square edition is a smash.
Yeah, it looks great.
And they enjoy it. So.
Great. The gentleman in the back. You, sir, with the striped shirt. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I was curious about your thoughts on the internationalization of culture and design, how hotels all over the world are starting to look a lot like hotels in New York, and if that's something that we just need to embrace, or is that something that somehow has always happened, or is it something that will have to change and cultures will have to sort of claim back their own identities?
That for me?
Oh, well, I'll try.
You guys start.
I mean, I think I see it too, and I don't like it at all. When I travel and I see a New York-themed restaurant in Turkey or something, it's like, oh my gosh. We worked on a restaurant in Turkey, and actually, we just fall in love with cultures every time we go. We really soak up things very quickly. We want to bring all of this attention to small details in that culture, but with this Turkish restaurateur, it was like, no, I want New York culture. I don't want anything from the spice market here. And I understood that. We were hired from a faraway place to bring something else. But I still don't like to see too many Soho houses in Istanbul, right? It's I don't know. It's hard because it connects back to the Hiltons that all look the same in 1975, right? This diversification and is so essential in the world, and I hope it always continues. I mean, it's a sensitive topic because it connects to nationalism. Sometimes if a nation identifies with stereotypes or cliches, they want to shed them, which I totally understand. They become design cliches if you use too many things or motifs from a certain culture. But it's a fine line, but it's important. If that answers.
Let's see. Here. This gentleman right here. Second row.
Hi, guys. My question's twofold. The first one being, I forget exactly who said it, but you're at your most creative when you have the least and when you're most kind of resourceful. And obviously with these large projects that you guys do, with big budgets, likely, how does that play into your design? And is that something that you guys believe in? And then the second part of that question, not related, is, you guys are speaking about these public spaces, residential and spaces in hotels, which are, touching all your senses. Are you guys ever going to get involved in the school system with like We Schools coming out and stuff like that? Everything you're saying feels very suited to kind of stimulating minds at a younger age in the school system. I'm just wondering if that's something you're going to get into.
Oh.
You take
Sorry, I can't hear anything.
Okay.
I'm so
He's
sorry.
got an accent.
Well, there was a two-part question, really. One question, which the second question was, would you guys ever get involved with schools, right? Design of schools.
I mean, that's what I hear. I mean, to me, that would just be the most amazing project, is to help a school, from young schools to even high schools. It's, sorry, my nose is stuffy. But I do recall, I went to 4 different high schools, for example. We moved every year. So every year I started a new high school, and every one of those high schools was a 1970s box of like hell box, just these dry. I never went to like a turn of the century gorgeous school or something like this. There were always these crazy cubicles, you know. And there's still tons and tons of these around, and I always just think to have an opportunity to do a school would just be fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know how we make that happen.
I know.
What about the kind of like the creativity?
Oh,
yeah, the first part of the question.
the first part of the question was sort of when you have the fewest resources, sometimes you're the most creative. So now that you guys are swimming in resources, how do you retain that creativity?
Well, I don't know about swimming in resources. I don't know. I'm absorbing that, and I don't feel that way. I mean, some projects are more like that than others. And I think you're right to ask the question, because you do have to challenge yourself to that kind of quest for making something the best. And if you know, often we all together have to fight for an idea that costs something because we believe it's worth it. So those restrictions will sometimes help you to get there. I mean, Stephen and I opened something, it's the first thing we've ever operated on our own, a store and a restaurant this year. That was a super challenge, and we didn't have a lot of money, and we really used just all of our ingenuity to try to make something that we were proud of. And it was, very tense in a way, because people are used to seeing us work on this big scale. So to do that, we wanted to live up to that. But also, there's sometimes an incredible sincerity that comes with that limitation that I think is a beautiful thing. But I don't necessarily, we've worked on also things that are pretty glamorous that then you say, let me make sure I'm spending it the right way. Because sometimes spending it the right way is about spending a lot on one thing. I mean, I remember in the Ace lobby, I just fought for these few, like these 2 at that moment. I found them, and they were not incredibly expensive, but expensive for that moment. But on these Prouvé pieces, and they had a certain spirit in that room that I believed was so meaningful. And of course, everybody thought I was utterly insane for recommending that. They're like, no, you're gonna find it all at some, Salvation Army. And I was like, no, you can't, right? And that's the tension. But so you have to, in a way, get your narrative and your intellect to a place where you can really defend your emotional position about why you believe something's right. And I think that's that's the second part of intuition. First, we have the intuition, and then I say, how do I express it?
I think I got your question now.
I hope I helped.
I don't think there's any correlation between resources and creativity. I think you're creative simply because you think outside the box. You think differently. You see things differently than the way other people see them. So you do something that manifests that, and people respond to that. And you do it because you have to. And you do it because you see holes in the market where there isn't something that there should be. I think the first to the second, anytime you take a designer, I'm not a designer, but you take a designer and you push them outside their comfort zone. If they were to do a submarine or a school, it would make them better in their other jobs.
Totally.
It just pushes you, and it's an enhancement. I think any great designer would take on a school. I'd like to do a school too.
Right.
Any new, it keeps polishing up that creativity, because now you're getting to see a whole bunch of other things you didn't see before. I think it's great, and not to get stuck doing the same thing over and over again.
The answer to your question might be that I think as a designer, you try to do projects that you have no experience in that realm, and that helps keep your creativity sort of on edge. And you don't just keep doing the same things. I think you kind of have to keep finding new categories to work in. It might be where my desire to do a school is because I know nothing about school design, and I don't care, and I don't want to, and I'll do a school and we'll just change everything. That's where the creativity spark starts.
Great, we have time for one more question. The lady with the glasses and the...
She's not gonna like that.
Thank you so much. This has been really wonderful. Are you receiving any pressure from Marriott or your other partners to incorporate more technology and smart products into these spaces? And how are you reconciling that with the intent for creating sort of peaceful respite?
Technology?
She's saying, are you getting any pressure from your partners to include more technology, and how do you reconcile that with the need for respite and a quiet space?
I have a cough. I'm not getting pressure from my partners, but technology is the future. It's a kind of an oxymoron that in this country, everybody, we invent all the technology, the companies don't speak to each other, so we can't use it. It's like ridiculous. The point of sale system doesn't talk to the property management system. It's like we had to go to Europe to get the technology. I think that if technology makes something cheaper or gets rid of friction points or makes it easier, it's great. And I am really interested in bringing technology to a hotel, not mood boards in the lobby, not iPads in the room, none of that junk. Because it's junk. It's gratuitous, patronizing, it's ridiculous, you know. But I think technology is the future in all things when you can harness it. But it's so funny. We're going to be the last to do it because we can't get the companies. The systems don't talk to each other. It's such an irony that we invented it and we can't do anything about it. But I absolutely think it's the future. And for me, it's right up there, if not even a little bit more dominant than design. Because the technology could make things easier and get rid of all the friction points. I didn't stand up to make the point. I stood up. The cough.
But it worked.
But it was effective.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That's so good. I love that.
Thank you. Well done. Well done. Thank you.